Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, zero-day exploits are striking over 100 companies right now. If you're copying links to bash scripts off the internet, you probably shouldn't be root. And the day Google automated itself off the internet. Plus a great big batch of your questions, our answers, a rockin' roundup, and much, much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi, everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is episode 266 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly Systems Network and Administration podcast. We stream this episode live on May 12th, 2016. This episode is brought to you by our three fine sponsors, DigitalOcean, Ting, and IX Systems. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. Oh, our live stream? Why, that's powered by the incredible Scale Engine over at scaleengine.com. You should really go check that out. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Mr. Alan Jude. Hello there, Alan. Hello.
Hello, Chris, everybody. Thanks for watching.
I'm feeling good. 266, Alan. I'm feeling good about that.
That's a lot of episodes.
And I think by this point, it'd be totally fair if you just wanted to phone it in and not have a big show. And I think people would understand after 266 weeks. But as a matter of point, you're like double down. We have a huge show. Like 6 pages of show
I got
docs.
up early this morning and...
and this is what we get.
Yeah.
That's what happens when Alan doesn't sleep. And I got up super early this morning, too. But we won't bemoan about that. We should probably start with this zero-day exploit against Microsoft point-of-sale systems. I'm assuming systems powered by Microsoft software in some capacity.
So this zero-day affects all versions of Windows. It just happens that this particular set of bad guys used it against point-of-sale systems.
Aha. All right. So tell me about it.
Yeah, so FireEye reports that more than 100 North American companies were attacked by crooks exploiting a Windows zero-day vulnerability. The attack started in early March and involved a zero-day vulnerability, CVE 2016-0167, which was reported and partially fixed as part of April's Patch Tuesday. And then the zero-day was found by the researchers at FireEye, and then they disclosed the details just this week. And I think Microsoft actually had a follow-up patch to improve their patch to it on this Tuesday as well.
Now, interesting, too, because I just read a story that Wendy's got hacked, and I wonder if...
Yep, it's probably that.
That's cool. That's cool. I sometimes go to Wendy's and get a burger. That's fine.
Yeah.
So FireEye, huh? Tell me about it.
Is about the exploit, or the flaw. The kernel mode driver in Windows Vista SP2, Server 2008 SP2, and R2 SP1, Windows 7 SP1, Windows 8.1, Windows Server 2012 Gold and R2, and Windows RT 8.1, and Windows 10 Gold, and Windows 10 15.11. So every supported version of Windows, probably all the other ones too, but they're not supported, so they don't talk about them. Allows local users to gain privileges via a crafted application, aka the Win32k elevation of privilege vulnerability. FireEye said that the flaw is a local privilege escalation in the Win32k Windows graphics subsystem. Attackers are able to exploit the flaw once they are able to remotely execute code on the targeted PC. Microsoft patched the vulnerability on April 12th and released a subsequent update to it this week. In March of 2016, a financially motivated threat actor, somebody out to steal money or credit card,
AKA just about anybody that has the knowledge and the skills.
Right, but in particular, what they mean by this is that they were after money, not, they weren't a state actor or they weren't just causing problems.
Right. It wasn't Putin ordering his secret hacker spies. It was somebody that just wants some cash.
I
follow. I just thought it was a funny way to put it.
It wasn't just script kiddies either. It was people out to make money.
Yep.
But they started several tailored spear phishing campaigns, primarily targeting the retail, restaurant, and hospitality industries. So they're after stores, restaurants, and hotels, and things of that nature. The emails contained a variation of a Microsoft Word document with embedded macros that, when enabled, downloaded and executed a malicious downloader that we refer to as Punch Buggy. I don't know where they get the name.
Punch Buggy? Is that what you said?
Yep, Punch Buggy.
Okay, all right, I'll take it.
Punch Buggy is a dynamically linked library, or DLL, downloader existing for both 32-bit and 64-bit versions that can obtain additional code via HTTPS. So they're always secure when they download the stronger virus.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. This
downloader was used by the threat actor to interact with the compromised systems and move laterally across the victim's environment. So you get on one person's machine by spear phishing them, and then that installs a downloader, which then can download your stronger malware that takes over the machine, and then you can island hop from there.
Yep.
I think the main reason they use HTTPS is so that network intrusion detection type stuff doesn't see the malware go by in the network because it's encrypted, right?
Yeah, interesting. So in other words, network monitoring equipment would say, oh, this is on 443. It's something we can't really inspect anyways. It's probably encrypted. Just ignore it. So do you think
they probably virus scan the files as they
do you think otherwise it might actively be doing packet inspection and try to block it, identify the traffic, pattern match it with something, and why isn't that more common, Alan?
I think it'll become more common. Luckily, the security industry is ahead of us on this one. I know the people that make the Voodoo, remember the SSH appliance? They make one called the Lynx that will decrypt the traffic. And then it doesn't actually do the analysis itself, but it can then shunt it to your existing appliances that do it for not encrypted traffic.
So just make sure I'm following the people that aren't familiar. Voodoo was a box you could put at the perimeter of your network. It would essentially be a go-between for SSHing into machines behind the network.
And VNC and
VPNs
remote desktop and VPN and SQL.
And so what's the difference with the new one?
So the Lynx one is intercepting SSL. So all your inbound and outbound SSL, all the outbound SSL, you do the thing where you install the certificate on their client machines and it does the man in the middle.
Right.
The big thing that makes it better than most other appliances is that it has, when you install the certificate onto the client machines, the appliance actually has two certificates. One it uses to sign valid certificates.
Okay.
But if sometimes you go to a website and it's got like a self-signed certificate when somebody has their own server because before Let's Encrypt, it was a free way to do it. Most appliances would then sign that with their good certificate that your client trusts, and then your machine doesn't, as the end user, you don't find out that that's actually not a trusted site. Whereas with the Voodoo, it will sign with its second not trusted certificate when the certificate's not valid, so that it actually works properly. That's the other one it does is it keeps the original expiration date and some of the other settings like that. So an expired certificate will still show up as being expired, whereas a lot of these appliances do a bad job, and the certificate's valid today or something, right? Like they just phone it in. Anyway,
that's a pretty neat little thing.
Yeah, there are ways to decrypt the traffic to be able to scan the files as they go back and forth, but a lot of networks don't have those yet, or aren't doing any inspection, or only inspecting unencrypted traffic, and so by encrypting it, it makes it harder to detect.
Yeah, that's clever, and probably going to, like you said, happen a lot more.
Yeah. In some victim environments, the threat actors exploited a previously unknown elevation of privilege vulnerability in Microsoft Windows to selectively gain the system privilege on a limited number of compromised machines. This actor has conducted operations on a large scale and at a rapid pace, displaying a level of operational awareness and the ability to adapt their operations on the fly. These abilities, combined with the targeted use of the elevation of privilege exploit and the reconnaissance required to individually tailor spear phishing messages for their victims, potentially speaks to the threat actor's operational maturity and sophistication. So, it wasn't your typical really badly worded phishing message. They specifically targeted people with a thing that would much higher chance that they would open. So you set the from address to somebody that person might actually expect to get a Microsoft Word document from.
Do you think this is indicative of because of the value of the target that maybe organized crime is getting involved?
Oh, that's entirely possible.
Yeah.
But whoever's doing it, they've probably been at it a while and learned from failures and so on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Security experts say as many U.S. companies snuff out point-of-sales malware by deploying chip-and-pin bank card technology, attackers are rushing to exploit the existing magnetic stripe card systems that are still vulnerable with malware before they all go away. FireEye, for example, reported that last month that there was a group of hackers that go by the name Bears Incorporated.
Adorable.
Are behind the latest barrage of attacks with a custom-built point-of-sale malware called Treasure Hunt. This latest zero-day vulnerability follows the same trend. Now, I would argue that chip and pin, switching your point-of-sales terminal to chip and pin doesn't make it not vulnerable to malware. But yes, if you're not swiping the magnetic stripe, then you're not getting the data you need to clone the card onto like a gift card or something. So there definitely are advantages going to chip and pin. I just don't want people to think that by switching to chip and pin, they don't have to worry about point of sales malware anymore. You still want to, ideally the point of sale system shouldn't be connected to the machines you open email on.
Oh, man.
In any way, right?
Yeah. Oh, man. Or the ones that your HVAC control systems are connected to, et cetera, et cetera. Because, yeah, exactly. If it's in the system's memory and you have malware on the system reading the RAM, it does. Yeah. Just as a total aside, following the whole chip and pin rollout here in the States, I shop at where I live. It's predominantly all non-chain. It's all my mom and pop owned. And I can't think of any of them yet that have chip and pin. None of them. A couple of the big chain stores I've shopped at, you have to put your card in. But it was new enough that within the last month or two, I had to be told how to do it. I had to be told I put my card in there, and then it sucks in the card into the machine and reads the chip, which seems
we don't.
Yeah,
no, here you just jam it in, and
it's motorized and mechanical, and that seems like that's faulty and going to have to cause
None of the machines here do that.
And then it sticks it back out, and then I do the rest of my transaction. But at all of the independent shops,
you stick the thing in. If is this the right amount? Okay, enter your PIN number. Okay, and zap. And
that seems way better.
Remove card and you go.
I don't know what to make of this. To me, I legitimately see more Apple Pay and Android Pay being adopted than I do chip and pin so far.
So Apple Pay started rolling out like
a year
this
ago,
week in Canada.
Oh, wow.
And only certain banks support it.
Yeah. It's interesting how it seems like the independent shops, for some reason, maybe I don't know if the rules don't apply to them the same way or what, but they don't seem to be replacing their systems where I shop.
Right. Yeah, it can depend on a bunch of things. Well, that was, I think, the thing I found the weirdest about visiting the States. Here, if you're at a restaurant and you want to pay with your card, they have a little wireless terminal they bring over, and they type in how much it is, and they hand it to you, and you put in your card and type in your PIN and set the tip. And then you hand it back. You take out your card and hand it back to them, and it prints the receipt or whatever. And then in the States, it's like, well, it's come up to the counter, or here, I'll take your credit card and disappear for a couple of minutes.
That is a very common thing. Yeah. The other thing I'm seeing a lot of in these independent shops is just using what is it? It's not Stripe, but what's the little Square? A lot of them are using a tablet and Square. And either and some of them have seriously elaborate mounts that are obviously designed for this thing to be a register to hold like a 10-inch tablet, and then some of them are just carrying them around at restaurants and stuff. And it seems to be for these small mom and pop shops, it's either super old credit card stuff from the 90s, or they've just leapfrogged all of that and they're on iPads or something. It's interesting to watch it all, and I imagine those will probably adopt chip and pin pretty quick. Well,
it was very, very quick here in Canada.
It seems like the way they've incentivized it, the way that the merchants are going to be held responsible for invalid transactions, it seems like they would whirl it out pretty quick. That usually usually gets people to move.
For a Walmart where people are going to try to buy a TV with a stolen credit card, sure. Mm-hmm. For the mom and pop restaurant, probably not. Their chargebacks are not a big thing for them.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much where it seems to be falling down, and then because of that, there's just a lag of technology adoption there. Which, as we read from this, means insecure things.
It's the people running the cash registers are usually amused if you have to sign for something now, because everything's so PIN, right?
Wow.
But my one stupid business card, credit card, is chip and signature, so it works properly in the States before you guys had chip and PIN.
Yeah.
And so even when I use it in Canada, it doesn't ask for a PIN. It makes me sign, and there always get strange looks.
North Ranger points out in the chat room that merchants here in the U.S. have been responsible for fraud as of November 2015. So it doesn't seem to be motivating them.
It was supposed to be November 2015. No, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's why most of them are doing it. They're just not particularly fast at it.
And the big ones are, like Best Buy and stuff does.
Yeah, but if you go back and look at the story we covered of why Target failed when it tried to move to Canada. It's all that shit happens at all stores, right? They try to use computers and they just totally fall.
Yeah, that is very good. They try to use computers and they just fail.
Yeah. Actually, we have a story coming up later in the show about SAP, which was the thing that killed Target in Canada.
All right. Well, any other thoughts on this particular story?
Just, again, while chip and pin makes it harder to clone cards, I don't think it's a solution to malware.
Yeah.
But the whole FireEye report is here if you want to look into it.
Yeah, check it out. Link in the show notes. All right, I'll tell you about IX
that was,
Systems.
the other one we have is Tap and Pay. Do you guys have that?
Oh.
Like Paywave?
No, I've seen some logos for it, but it's never active anywhere I go.
Okay, because basically every chip card here, most of the terminals are also enabled. And if, depending on the limit you set, I think, but the default's $50, you can just tap your card against the machine.
That is so nice.
And no pin, nothing. Works great for like buying coffee.
I know, you would think in our Starbucks fast food culture here in the U.S. to speed things up, you think we would be using that like
Starbucks
crazy.
already has their own card for this whole thing. But it was very popular.
I have seen the readers. I just have never seen any cards that use it.
The main thing I buy every week is groceries, and my bill is usually too high for the tap and pay thing.
Yeah.
So sometimes I do it. We stopped at the grocery store just to pick up dessert one day, and I was just like, blunk.
My grocery store does Apple Pay, and that's pretty cool. But
I don't own any Apple devices.
No, but I think any of them that do Apple Pay also do all the other ones. And I think
usually, yes.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's take just a moment and thank IX Systems. We're both huge fans of IX Systems. Go over to ixsystems.com/TechSNAP and discover a land of rigs built with those gorgeous Intel processors designed for those server workloads. And these systems are going to work for any open source workload you have. Now, we often talk about IX Systems with FreeBSD, but they can also run different versions of the BSDs, Linuxes. Or maybe you should go check out their FreeNAS, it's FreeNAS, and then there's TrueNAS, yes. which is really the NAS for the enterprise.
Yeah, there's super enterprise. It's crazy. Yeah. It's like certified for VMware and everything.
Yeah, and exactly, which is a huge deal. It's got the VMware certifications. It's won awards.
It actually competes against things like your EMCs, your Dell SANs, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And usually with one fewer zeros in your price tag.
Yes. So that's
a big difference.
It's all of the great stuff we talk about IX every single week in that level of a product. And what's beautiful about it is then for the smaller situations, you could run FreeNAS either on your own built box, which is also FreeNAS is a project supported by IX Systems, or you can get the FreeNAS Mini or the FreeNAS XL, and those things are rock solid production units, and it's the same relationship with the same company for your huge high-end enterprise grade stuff or your small business grade stuff. If you want something that's rock solid and bulletproof, I've got a FreeNAS mini server that sits out there and runs 24/7 for 2 years now as the back-end storage for the Jupiter Broadcasting Network, and it has been bulletproof. And I'm talking production downloads and uploads to it all the time. I'm talking about serving up multiple files. I'm talking about doing multimedia casting to the televisions in the studio and running our VMs over NFS. It is a monster, and it's the older one. It's not even like the cool one with the awesome Intel Atom server processor in it. It's like it's got, I don't know what it has in it. I think it has an i3 in it. Yeah,
like a first gen. I think.
Yeah, but it's a rock solid device, and that's just where they begin at. Plus, they have great enterprise grade support to match it. Really good stuff. Alan's been a customer for a while now, and Alan's a picky SOB.
Kind of. Also, even if you're not looking to buy hardware or whatever, if you're just interested in stuff in the industry, their blog always has cool stuff.
I was going to say that, yeah. Their blog is really great. In fact, their blog is a little bit easier to get to now, which is nice. Something else we don't mention too often is they also have their case studies up on their site, ixsystems.com/case-studies, which is also a great place to go check out. I would follow the blog.
Lots of companies that have built stuff based on it.
If you guys have the inkling and you want to work inside your company to move over to IX, so that way, just think about that. Just think about what a huge improvement that might be for you. This might help grease those wheels a little bit. ixsystems.com/TechSNAP, though, that's where you go to land and support this show, and maybe even get yourself that white paper. ixsystems.com/TechSNAP, machines built by those incredible Intel processors and a great team, a deep bench of open source experts, hardware experts, industry professionals, enthusiasts, and just an overall great company that supports a lot of important open source projects and developers. ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. Okay, Alan, I was digging around the show notes. I looked ahead, and I love this next one. A lot of times, I'm guessing just from kind of what I read ahead, a lot of times you see people that will just take a command on line, copy, and paste it into their terminal and run it, which is a bad practice.
We've shown before how with some JavaScript, you can actually make it so you highlight some code and copy, and when you paste it, it's completely different code.
Yes.
We've shown that on the show before.
Yes.
But the newest thing that lots of tutorials and or the installation instructions for stuff do, worse, the installation instructions for Intel's kernel hardening tool are this. Literally, it's like, so curl some URL of a shell script pipe bash.
Yeah.
Right?
I've seen a lot of those.
Download this script
Yeah.
and run it directly in bash,
Yeah.
and that'll install this application for you.
This is kind of common on
the new, fake DevOps, way to install things.
that, and I'm gonna just take one here. I'll just admit it too. The Linux desktop is kind of a clown show for installing software if you want to target a whole bunch of different distros. And so if you want one universal installation, sometimes it's just a good old shell script. And so sites will just have download this and run this, and it's basically that. It's a shell script that you just execute as root. It adds repos, adds keys, installs software.
Sure, and that is terrible. But this one we're actually talking about piping the result of the curl directly into bash.
That is
not even looking at the file or downloading it or verifying that it's right.
That's just warp speed ahead.
Yes, we've laughed at people before because of this. Because well, if you're not doing it over HTTPS, somebody could do man in the middle and replace the shell script with something different. Mm-hmm. So this one is over at idon'tplaydarts.com, which is a good way to phrase this kind of stuff. I don't play dangerously when I'm doing a sysadmin. But it's like, if you think doing curl pipe bash is okay, you shouldn't have root access. Installing software by piping from curl to bash is obviously a bad idea, and a knowledgeable user will most likely check the content first before doing it. Right? So people are like, oh, so I look at the URL and see what the script is before I run it. So wouldn't it be great if the malicious payload could only render when piped into bash instead? So when the admin looks at it, it looks fine. It's a perfectly safe shell script. When you pipe it into bash, you get something completely different.
Evil.
So we all know it's bad, but some people do it anyway. They tell themselves it's all right because they're checking the content. But that only works if you end up downloading the same thing as you would actually, and piping that into bash compared to what you actually reviewed. So luckily, the behavior of curl and wget or whatever else changes subtly when you pipe it into bash. This allows an attacker to present two different versions of their script depending on the context. It's not that the HTTP request from curl when piped to bash looks any different than any other that's piped to standard out. In fact, for all intents and purposes, it's identical, right? So the bad guy can't just, if it's curl, send this different thing because maybe that's what you're going to use to look at it and see that it's fine before running it. Mm-hmm. And as far as the web server can tell, just by looking at your request, it can't tell if you're piping it into bash or not.
Right.
Luckily, execution in bash is performed line by line. And so the speed that bash can ingest data is limited by the speed of the execution of the script. That means if we return a sleep at the start of our script, the TCP send stream will pause while we wait for the sleep to execute. This pause can be detected and used to render different content streams. Right? So if the shell script starts with sleep 10 and then some other commands, as we're sending the data to the user, to the curl, eventually curl's the send buffer is going to get full and the receive buffer will be full and curl's buffer will be full and the window back to the application will be 0 and no more data will be sent. But if you're doing it to, say, your console, it's not going to do that. It's going to just, all the data will flow through because it's not being blocked. Mm-hmm. So by using a sleep at the top of the script, we can create this blocking action that we can then detect on the server, and only when we detect it, send the bad script.
Wow.
Unfortunately, it's not just as simple as wrapping, socket.send sleep 10 in a timer and waiting for a send call to block. The send and receive TCP streams in Linux are buffered on a per socket basis. So we have to fill up those buffers before the call to send will actually block. And we know and then curl has its own buffer for writing to the pipe. So, it'll have downloaded data out of its local, to the receive socket buffer and tried to put it into the buffer to the pipe to DD, right? We got buffers all the way down.
Yeah.
So we have to fill all of those before we'll get back a window update with a size set to 0, telling us that we can't send any more data because it hasn't all been received yet. We've got the maximum amount of data in flight. The only character you can really use to print to the screen that won't show up when you're just piping into the console or looking at it in Chrome is the null byte, because it won't render on most consoles and won't render in Chrome if the character set is set to HTML or the content type. And so as we know, the content length data is transferred at the beginning. So we have to switch to chunked encoding so that we can have a variable length stream. And then we could just send strings of null bytes that are the same size as TCP send buffer until we get the blocking action caused by the buffer being full. Or if we don't get it after a certain amount of time, we can just send the safe script. So the attacker sends chunks of nulls until all the buffers on the client side are full. And because bash is sleeping and not receiving data yet, and then all the attacker has to do is give their different payload. So we can see when we just run curl, we get sleep 3, hello there, nothing. If we run it again, but pipe it into bash, we get asleep and then troll face.
Yeah, troll face. I love it.
Which is your malicious content.
Yeah.
And so it detects when you do it wrong and burns you for it.
The source code is linked there too, which is great, which is just a nice touch.
Yeah. Curl Sleeper Agent. That's a good title.
So I wonder how the hell they thought of this. They must have just been sitting around going, how can we stop this? What can we do to make a point? Well, how can we prove a point? You know? And then,
I'm
just
still
went from there.
flabbergasted by when you go to get Intel's kernel hardening tool for Linux and the install instructions are curl pipe bash.
That is super disappointing, isn't it?
I was just like, oh my goodness, that is terrible, terrible, terrible.
Yeah, I guess, it's sort of a lazy way to do it. And that's just, there's no
It's
real...
like, I understand that it's really not any better than downloading a shell script and running it. But just by doing it that way, it just should only... It's basically targeted at people that shouldn't be sysadmins. If that's how you want it, if you want just one command and it works, you shouldn't be allowed to have admin access on anything.
Yeah.
Your own desktop, let alone.
Yeah. It's a little dangerous.
Yeah.
All right. Well, other than that little bit of, I feel like that's a PSA you just gave us there, Alan. Anything else on that story?
No.
Well, let me take a moment. I'll tell you about Ting. TechSNAP.ting.com. Go there, save yourself some cash, and support this show. You want to talk about running as admin. One of the things I've never gotten and I don't really understand how it even got popular. I guess people just desperately needed mobile phones, but the current cell phone model that the duopolies benefit from is obviously one where you are just a user and you get a device, and that device is on that network, and it's locked to that network in some weird way that they can still get away with, that you can go out of your way to work around. And it's limited in how much you can do. You have to pay into certain amounts. It doesn't really, if you think about it, it would never, if it was a fair market today, it would never succeed. Like if they had to start from the beginning, the way the current carriers operate would never work. And that's where Ting is really different. See, Ting is, I think, if you were to start today in 2016, Ting would have this would be the most obvious way to do it. First of all, you only pay for what you use. You don't have to have like a mythical, I might use 5 gigabytes, I might use 800 minutes. Like, you don't have to play this guessing game. You just pay for what you use. It's a flat $6 for the line. What I think the most beautiful thing about that people don't often realize is that means it scales crazy good. You can have 10 devices on there, and there's just nobody who is matching that. $6 for the line. You can bring your own device. You can get the GSM SIM. So go to TechSNAP.ting.com to find out more. No contracts, no early termination fees. In fact, they hate those things. Ting hates them so much. They will help pay for your early termination fee when you come over to Ting. That's how much they hate them. Check them out, too. They have radically good customer support. I mean, stuff that's just not matched by any other carrier. They have the best dashboard in the business. I have never actually called Ting to activate any of my phone devices. The one time I've had to call Ting customer service, and it was like, they stuck with me, was I had an issue with my MiFi on the road. But every single phone, including my Nexus 5s or an iPhone, or when I had the HTC One on Ting, when I've had the Nexus 5X on Ting, I've had the Evo 4G on Ting. I've had a lot of phones. I've had the iPhone 5 on Ting. All of them. I only have 3 lines current now. All of those phones, I never once actually called into Ting to activate. Their website is just super good. And so, like, if I'm sitting around at 8:30 at night, I'm like, you know what? I'd like to try the latest version of Android for a while on this phone and get it activated and actually really test it with service. I'll just go to the Ting website. I put in the IMEI or whatever it is on the phone, the ID number. I activate the plan, and within a couple of minutes, I've got service, and I'm good to go. And I just pay for what I use, and when I don't want it, I turn it off. It's really simple. TechSNAP.ting.com. Go there, check it out. They also, speaking of blogs, have a great blog. I love this. I love these kind of reviews. A month with a device, not a weekend with a device, not 4 days before Apple releases it, and so you can post your review up on Engadget. A month with the Ansitel One Touch Idol 3. A great review to go read on the Ting blog. And under $200. With the TechSNAP discount, you could get the Idol 3 for $153. Unlocked, no contract, pay for what you use. It can go up to 128 gigabytes of storage with the micro SD slot, which is awesome. It has a reversible...
Why do every phone not have a micro SD slot?
I don't know, dude. I don't know what is up with that.
They took them out on purpose just to screw you.
Yeah, it is a bummer. It's got a 13 megapixel camera, which is not bad. I love that. So check it out. It's a great phone. It gills up to Lollipop, the current version of Lollipop right now, for $153 when you go to techsnap.ting.com. On the crazy bargain end, they just added the Huawei U3900. 3900 it's a refurb, $38. So it's just, if you just need a flip phone to make calls, or you want to give it to a family member, because remember they're only paying when they use it, and this thing's going to be dead cheap on Ting. I mean, look at that, $38, no contract, ships tomorrow. You support the show, and you've got an emergency phone with a battery that probably lasts a week. It's pretty ridiculous. I doubt they're going to have very many of these. You know what's funny? So it only has a 900 milliamp battery, but the spec sheet measures the phone's battery life in days, not hours. Yep. It's so great.
Well, it's most of the power on your phone usually goes to the screen, right?
Yeah, I guess so. TechSNAP.ting.com. Go there, support the show, read their blog to find out more about the Idol. They've got all the great devices all the way up to the latest phones. TechSNAP.ting.com. So
someday they will announce they're coming to Canada.
I hope so.
Screwed.
I hope they announce they're going to do fiber here in little old Arlington, Washington.
Well, there's that. But seriously, my phone company, it was like, oh, your contract's up, so let's renew it. We see you own your device. That's cool. Our contract always comes with a phone, so we'll just send you a free phone, too. I'm like, not really. It's like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Now you have a device balance of $400 that you have to pay off by doing your contract.
Yeah, see, this is the kind of shenanigans. Like,
the contract wasn't going to be any cheaper without it, so they were going to keep the money either way.
There's a carrier that launched this. Every year you can upgrade for $15 a month. You pay $15 a month, and we'll upgrade your phone every time the new phone comes out for the iPhone. And so I went in there to ask them about it because I was like, geez, this is pretty competitive. I'll see how they compare to Ting. And so to get the phone you'd actually want, like say one that was more than 16 gigs of storage, and then you have to get mandatory insurance. They don't tell you that in the ad. It turns out to be like $24 a month. On top of the $60 or $70 a month service plan, which is the minimum service plan that you have to buy, which has like a limited amount of days. It was the scams and hoops you have to jump through for all of the other carriers. It's ridiculous. That's where Ting is so simple. At the end of the day, what I really appreciate about Ting after like more than 2 years of being a customer is there's no gimmicks. It's just really straightforward, simple, and I really appreciate that. I don't really have time for the other stuff.
The big one to look at is, if you remember way back, there used to be services where you paid a subscription for your internet and they gave you your computer with it.
Yes, right? Yes.
Yeah. And all those went away because it turns out people want to own their computer and then just use it and be able to switch ISPs if they want.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing with the smartphone.
Choice for that. But yes, it's like, how did we not learn this with a smartphone?
Well, I think we're starting to figure it out.
Someone else's phone.
Yeah, I think that's why.
I've owned all but one of my phones ever.
Yeah.
And the one time I didn't, I was not pleased.
Yeah, I think that's why Ting's been growing like crazy in the last year, is because of that. So Google sort of automated themselves offline? What happened here?
Yes.
What's going on?
So this is a little bit old, but I meant to get to it before, but with our crazy travels and stuff, we didn't get to it. Anyway, so back on Monday, April 11th, Google Compute Engine, which is basically Google's competitor to Amazon's EC2, right? You can basically pay Google to rent virtual machines to run whatever you want to the cloud.
Yeah, and then
their instances in every region in the world lost external connectivity for a total of 18 minutes. Some of them for longer.
Holy crap!
So yeah, they basically all went offline. So this is the story of how the automation knocked all of Google Compute Engine off of the internet.
Okay, good.
So Google uses contiguous groups of IP addresses, known as IP blocks, for Google Compute Engine VMs, the network load balancers, the cloud VPN, and all the other services which need to communicate with users and systems outside of Google. These IP blocks are announced to the rest of the internet via the industry standard BGP protocol, and it is these announcements which allow systems outside of Google's network to find the Google Compute Engine services. So, that this is how the internet works. You have a router, and it tells all of its neighbors, hey, here's my set of IP addresses, and if you have packets for these IP addresses, send them to me. Mm-hmm. Right. And then the next router aggregates all of its own plus all of its neighbors and sends it to all of its neighbors. And it spreads out. And eventually, everybody in the internet knows how to get every IP address.
I mean, if you're talking about BGP, I mean, people use BGP even on their LANs if they have a large LAN. I mean,
exactly. So, and basically the way it works is if you stop announcing an address after a couple of minutes, the announcement times the data in the neighbor router times out, and it stops sending packets to you.
Yeah. Yep.
So what Google does to maximize service performance, Google's network system announces the same IP address blocks from several different locations on our network so that users take the shortest available path through the internet to reach their Google service.
Okay.
This approach uses enhanced reliability, or also enhances reliability. If a user is unable to reach one location announcing an IP block due to an internet failure between the user and Google, or their ISP or whatever, this approach will send the user to the second closest point of announcement. This is part of the internet's fabled ability to route around problems, and it masks or avoids numerous localized outages every week as individual systems on the internet have temporary problems. So basically, they do what's called anycast, where normally one IP address points to one specific server in one specific place, whereas with Google's Compute Engine thing, they announced all of the addresses from all of their data centers, and you automatically go to whichever one's closer. So, back on the 11th at 14:50, so that's 2:50 p.m. Pacific time on the 11th, the Google engineers removed an unused Google Compute Engine IP block from our network configuration. So they have a whole bunch of blocks of IPs, and there was one that wasn't being used, and they're like, let's stop routing that so we can use it somewhere else.
Sure.
So they instructed Google's automated systems to propagate the new configuration across our network. By itself, this sort of change was harmless and has been performed previously without incident. However, on this occasion, Google's network configuration management software detected an inconsistency in the newly supplied configuration. The inconsistency was triggered by a timing quirk in the IP block removal. The IP block had been removed from one configuration file, but this change had not yet been propagated to a second configuration file also used by the network management configuration software. In attempting to resolve this inconsistency, the network management software is designed to fail safe and revert to its current configuration rather than proceeding with the new configuration. So the automation system detected a problem with the config file and was supposed to continue using the original one instead of going to the next one, newer version.
Yeah.
However, in this instance, a previously unseen software bug was triggered, and instead of maintaining or retaining the previously known good configuration, the management software instead removed all Google Compute Engine IP blocks from the new configuration and began pushing this new modified configuration with incomplete data to the entire network.
Did you say a bot?
Not a bot, but basically automated software.
Okay. I thought you said a bot. I was like, wow, really? Google's using...
Kind of like a bot.
Yeah, I guess.
It removed all the IP blocks from their configuration instead of pushing it.
Yeah.
It's like...
that is a bit of a mistake. That's an error, you could say.
Yeah. Misconfiguration. Unseen bug. So one of our core principles at Google is defense in depth. The Google networking system has a number of safeguards to prevent them from propagating invalid or incorrect configurations in the event of an upstream failure or bug. These safeguards include a canary step, where the configuration is deployed to a single site, and that site is verified to still be working correctly, and then a progressive rollout happens where we add one more site and one more site, keep watching and make sure they don't break. This makes changes to only a fraction of the sites at a time so that a novel failure, meaning one they've never seen before, can be caught at an early stage before it becomes a widespread problem. In this event, the canary step correctly indicated that the new configuration was in fact unsafe. Crucially, however, a second software bug in the management software did not propagate the canary step's conclusions back to the push process, and thus the push process concluded that the new configuration was valid and began a progressive rollout. So the canary was like, no, stop, it's bad, it's going to wreck everything. And the software was like, it's okay, I'm going. So he got pushed back, but it didn't go percolate high enough to actually stop the rollout.
That's interesting, though. That's a neat system, it sounds like. If it works.
Yeah, if it had actually worked, it would be pretty cool, yes.
I'm thinking about that, because that means companies like Snapchat were down, Rovio, Khan Academy.
Yep. Most of them, for most of this time, they would have just been getting poorer and poorer performance as you had to go to a further and further away data center to get to them.
I see. Right.
And then for a total of 18 minutes, everything was offline.
Right.
But we're about to get to that. So the automation software detected the new configuration was bad, but ignored the signal that it should stop and went ahead anyway. As the rollout progressed, those sites which had been announcing Google Compute Engine IP blocks ceased to do so. And when they received the new configuration. So after a couple of minutes, their peers would stop sending them traffic. The fault tolerance built into our network design worked correctly and sent Google Compute Engine to the remaining sites, which were still announcing the IP blocks. As the progressive rollout kept going, more and more sites dropped offline, though. Eventually, with no sites left announcing the Google Compute Engine blocks, incoming traffic from the internet to Google Compute Engine dropped quickly, reaching more than 95% packet loss at about 1909 Pacific.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. So in total, this kind of happened over a course of 5 hours. 5 hours when they first made the mistake, and then as it rolled out, it just got worse and worse. Internal monitors generated dozens of alerts in the seconds after traffic loss became visible at 1908. And the Google engineers who had been investigating a localized failure of the Asia-East 1 VPN, which was one of the first things to be hit because it wasn't spread out as many places because it only announced in the data centers in Asia East. So it went offline first, and they were looking at it, but then all of a sudden they get alerts, everything is down. So the engineers now knew that they had a widespread and serious problem. They did precisely what we trained them for and decided to revert the most recent configuration changes and made the network have a problem before even knowing for sure what the problem was. So it doesn't matter why things aren't working. Let's just roll back to the previous config and get everything working again.
Go back.
With it after.
Yeah. I've been there.
This was the correct action, and the time from detection to decision to revert to the end of the outage was thus just 18 minutes.
Okay.
With the immediate outage over, the team froze all configuration changes to the network and worked in shifts overnight to ensure that first that the systems were stable and that there was no remaining customer impact, and then to determine the root cause of the problem. By 7 a.m. on April 12th, the team was confident they had established the root cause as a software bug in the network configuration management software. So then Google's started making changes to make sure this doesn't happen again. I think they made more than 14 changes so far. But things that they're planning to do still, although some of these might actually be done now that it's a month later, monitoring targeted Google Compute Engine network paths to determine if they change or cease to function. So if if the route to this changes at all, we should probably have an alert. Comparing the IP block announcements before and after a network configuration change to ensure that they are identical in size and coverage. So get an alert if any IP addresses stop being announced.
Yep.
Although in this case, that was the point of this original update that caused the problem.
Yeah. But you don't often
checks.
make changes like that.
Yes, exactly. Semantic checks for network configurations to ensure that certain specific cloud IP blocks are always in them. And they say, so Google says, we take all outages seriously, but we are particularly concerned with outages that affect multiple zones simultaneously because it is difficult for our customers to mitigate the effects of such outages. Google doesn't guarantee that they're going to have 100% uptime and everything. But they tell you if you set up your network so you have some VMs over here and some VMs over here and set up our failover system, both of these won't be down at the same time.
Just like Amazon says.
Yeah, exactly. Except when they are. So when Google had an outage that affected all of their zones simultaneously, they were, it's hard for their customers to do anything about it. This incident report is both longer and more detailed than usual precisely because we consider the April 11th event so important and want you to understand why it happened and what we are doing about it. It is our hope that by being as transparent and providing considerable detail, we both help you to build more reliable services and we demonstrate our ongoing commitment to offering you a reliable Google Cloud platform.
Yeah, can you imagine how intense the pressure is there during outages? That must be an intense environment.
Yeah.
Oof,
I know what it's like here.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, that sounds like pretty solid and sound stuff, adding those alerts. Pretty obvious in retrospect, I suppose, but not things I've ever thought of really monitoring.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to be doing a lot of BGP for a bunch of that to make sense.
Yeah.
But it's,
I did have a
trying
client.
to automate too much of that is.
I did have a client that had a bunch of buildings, detached, disparate, or however you say that, buildings.
Disparate.
Yeah, and because we're in Podunk, Arlington, the only way to connect those buildings was point-to-point wireless. And as you can imagine, point-to-point wireless can go out from time to time. And so you would have to, if one building link went down, the other buildings would still need to get to their file servers and whatnot. So it would have to route around that. And that's pretty much just how we used BGP. And this is only a 200 user LAN, but we still had a use for BGP for navigating a sort of a semi-rocky wireless infrastructure.
Did you do any tuning, or did it actually take 5 minutes to figure out there was a problem?
No, it actually, for the most part, was more of a pain in the ass than it was a benefit because it was early days, and we were dealing with we had HP switches, Dell switches, which were their own thing at the time, and Cisco switches. So it took us a while to dial it in. But I think I recall by the time we had a contractor come in and help with us because we were having so many problems. It actually worked pretty well. We did some testing where it actually got to the point where we would just take a device offline, and the system seemed to work pretty well. So, yeah. I don't remember the details, but I remember it was a nightmare getting it going because sometimes things would mess up, especially on those old Dell switches, which had this really crazy firmware. It was not good. Any other thoughts on that story, Mr. Jute?
Nope, that's it for that one.
Well, you know what is good? DigitalOcean. In fact, DigitalOcean's got a couple of things up their sleeves I want to tell you about. Use our promo code SNAPOcean to get a $10 credit. DigitalOcean is a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way for you to get a rig on demand. In fact, you can start in less than 55 seconds, and the pricing plans start at only $5 a month. 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, because they all SSDs, y'all. Oh, yeah. And they've got a blazing fast CPU in that bad mamma jamma, and a terabyte of transfer. They got great bandwidth, too, and data centers in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, Toronto. They got the latest distros, and FreeBSD is up there now. They have FreeBSD 10, what, up there?
10.2. They're working on 10.3.
10.3?
Also, I'm probably not supposed to say anything. But, I did get some email from some developers at DigitalOcean who are trying to get ZFS going in the droplets.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's going to be a thing, dude. Well, and I wonder, too, they've got, they're working on a block storage that they have an invite out for.
On the front page, on a certain page of the website, there's a link to sign up to get into the...
Yeah, I signed up,
beta.
too. I totally signed up. Yeah.
Well, because it's exactly what you've been looking for, right? It's like, well, I want like bulk storage for my droplet, and ideally I want to be able to move it between my droplets.
Yeah. Yeah,
and that's what it is.
Right now, I have a couple of... So they make it really easy to scale CPU and memory, and then I have, using private networking, another storage server, which works super well because private networking doesn't count against my transfer. I noticed they just recently posted a couple of days ago how to set up an OpenVPN server on Ubuntu 16.04 if you want to get into OpenVPN out there. This would be a great tutorial to read.
It shows how good, on top of the tutorials there are, that they're a distro that's only been out for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, they're serious about these tutorials. It's really nice. DigitalOcean.com, just use our promo code SNAPOcean. That's one word in all lowercase. That gives us credit and gives you a $10 credit. DigitalOcean.com.
So on top of working with the ZFS stuff for them and performance in general for FreeBSD, I will be using their API a bunch soon, and I will have fun things to say about that.
Ooh, interesting. We've been messing around with their API too. We really like it. So yes. We should collaborate. That's good. I'd love to know. They have a great API for that. So there is a little drama going on over at VirusTotal. What's the word there, Alan?
Yeah, so VirusTotal is a popular online malware aggregation service. Basically, it was a website that set up back in 2004 and allowed you to upload viruses, and then the samples went out to the virus companies so they could try to detect them. And it also eventually grew into a thing where when you upload a virus, it can actually tell you which virus scanners detect it and which ones don't yet.
That's cool.
So it started back in 2004, but it was acquired by Google in 2012. And basically, researchers and users submit malware samples, and they get tested against the static detection engines of more than 50 different antivirus vendors, and you get a little report. So I have an example linked here.
Oh, cool.
You can see what it looks like when you upload some malware. bring that up. However, there's been a concern that many of the next-gen security startups, so if you look at the thing here, you can see the different antivirus things, and then the result in the middle is what virus they detected as, and you can see the level of consistency you get
for the names.
The naming of
They're
viruses
just all
between
over
vendors.
the place.
Yeah. And then at the end there is the date of the file.
Interesting. When they started detecting it?
Yeah, what do they call it?
When they added to their pattern recognition, yeah.
Oh, well, I think it's what version of the pattern recognition it was matched against. So it'll usually always be a date within the last week or so.
Yeah, okay.
Depending on the virus.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, you can upload a sample and it'll test it against all the virus scanners and tell you what
look
you
at
think about
this. It gives me behavioral information.
Yeah, so they also run it in a sandbox, and then you can tell it. You can see what it actually does when you run it.
This is Unix malware you uploaded.
I didn't upload this. This is it's an APK. It's an Android malware.
I see. Because I'm noticing it's going to /mount/SD card. There it is. Boom, right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is some Android malware that I've linked because it was just the first link I found.
Huh. I've like, wait a minute. Those aren't Windows paths.
So there's been a concern that these next-gen security companies and startups are abusing the VirusTotal API rather than building their own detection engine. So instead of writing their own software to detect viruses, they've just grabbed the hashes of these files and send them to VirusTotal and be like, "Hey, is this a known virus?"
Okay.
And basically piggybacking on the work of all the traditional AV vendors, the 50-plus vendors that are in the list there. Worse, this type of use doesn't contribute anything back to the VirusTotal community. Right, so
yeah, that seems fair. Yeah, you're scraping user information.
You're scraping that, and you're not even sending them the new samples necessarily.
Yeah.
So Google this week changed the terms of service of the site, saying that all scanning companies will now be required to integrate their detection scanner into the public VirusTotal interface in order to be eligible to receive antivirus results as part of the VirusTotal API services. So if you want to be able to use the API from your virus scanner, you have to make your virus scanner available to VirusTotal so that your scanner can be added to the results.
Do they say, when they say available, do they say in what way?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
In general, it means you have to give them your engine so that Google can run it and
in a
scan the
VM
files.
or something.
Yeah.
Okay. That seems kind of reasonable.
Well, 50 other vendors are already doing it, right? So, if you're taking and not giving back, then that's an issue in this case. Additionally, new scanners that want to join the community will need to prove a certification and/or independent review from security testers according to the best practices of the Anti-Malware Testing Standards Organization. So, you have to actually prove that you have a virus scanner that does something before you can join.
It must actually be a functional product.
Yes. So traditional vendors have applauded the move. So there's links here from Trend Micro's blog or the blog of one of the board members from Malwarebytes.
Oh, all right. I'm going to take a look.
And they're talking about why they think this is a good thing. However, I think it was the Malwarebytes one called out a couple of specific cloud vendors or next-gen vendors. And those next-gen vendors didn't think too highly of that. Yeah, so they in the response called the AV bomb that never was, they talk about how some of this is just the old industry trying to stave off their competitors or whatever. In particular, I think it was the Malwarebytes blog called out Cylance and SentinelOne, two of the bigger next-gen security companies, and so the people from both of those companies, Cylance and SentinelOne, actually posted responses in that blog post. Kind of refuting some of the claims of the traditional AV vendors.
Oh, interesting. Down here, like in the comments?
Yep. There's the reaction by Cylance.
Yeah, I see that.
And, another one by SentinelOne. And those are like full interview almost. And then Palo Alto Networks and CrowdStrike also provided responses, or at least summaries.
There is some drama going on here, isn't there?
Yeah. And obviously, the new cloudy-based people versus the old, antivirus people.
Yeah.
Some of the startups are actually, bogus things that are just bogus, right? Like Norse was. But, Cylance in particular seems to actually have a real thing. although theirs is all based on like math and heuristics, and so is quite a bit different than, rather than just being, oh, we collect the malware by finding it in the wild, which makes it more reactive. So basically, if you had a malware scanner that every time it saw a new file, it could send that file to its database, it could detect new viruses faster than, your typical Symantec type one, where they have to eventually find out about the virus and then get a copy of it and then run it in the VM and see what it can do and then make a detection for it, right?
Do you remember when we talked about the Microsoft solution that is aggregating the Microsoft bug heuristics back to make a perimeter defense system? Did we talk about that on this show?
A little bit, yeah.
Essentially, Microsoft...
That one was just finding the crashes in Windows.
Right, okay, I don't know, maybe we didn't talk. So they're actually going to be rolling out a new product that is like a...
Right, I remember that,
yeah,
yes.
it's like and they're going to be collating all of the different Windows 10 machines and other things that are reporting back to sort of arm this thing with information. They're rolling their own version of a cloud-powered, whatever you want to call it.
And they're in the situation, the position where they can get it on everybody's computer, even when you haven't, paid for their software.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really...
Microsoft in a kind of anti-competitive situation right there.
Yeah, because they've got those metrics coming back from every computer out there. It's
part of the problem of Windows 10 spying on you. There will be some valid uses for it and some actual useful outcome.
But you could see why there could be some validity to the quote unquote new guys that want to.
Yes, some of the new guys, like Cylance, are actually a real product that works.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is some of them are literally just, we'll just run all your files through this API, and charge you a lot of money. It's like we have the collective detection power of like all 50 virus scanners.
Yeah.
And those people are getting cut off, For example, I think Cylance and SentinelOne said they don't even use VirusTotal. It's like, well, then obviously you're not going to miss the API you never used.
That's
right?
Yeah. Although it still seems like a pretty good service for customers.
So, in the end, you can kind of see the point of both sides of this one.
Yeah.
If companies aren't giving back and are just taking from the community, that's not very helpful. The whole point of this is the antivirus vendors sharing their stuff with each other, where normally they're quite secretive, right? They don't want to give away their IP. And, how their detection engine actually works is their entire business model.
Yep.
Right? And having theirs be slightly better than somebody else's. But, as a community service and as a thing for researchers, having this available to researchers as, quick way to run it against every virus scanner is really powerful, and I wouldn't want to see that go away.
I agree. Interesting story, Alan. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how this impacts the network. I imagine, or the industry. I don't imagine it'll actually be that much outside of maybe a few shady startups that'll go away because they lost access to the API. But they were probably not going to survive anyway. So
I agree. Before we jump into the feedback, we should give a mention to BSD Now, episode 141. BSD likes Ike. Just got published a little bit earlier today. Anything worth mentioning? Well, I'm sure there's lots to worth.
It was a great interview we did in Tokyo with Ike from mostly about OpenSense, but also just BSDs in general and jails and stuff like that. Lots of other good news stuff.
Cool.
Some hints that FreeBSD might finally have graphics support all the way up to Skylake in the next couple of weeks.
Hey-o. Nice. Oh, and also we should mention too.
Oh yes,
the BSD Now T-shirts are limited run for. There's an event coming up, right?
Yes, BSD Can is in a couple of weeks, and so we had to. We were a little late thinking of doing this, but we had to set a short enough date that you have time to end so that this campaign can run and things get printed and everybody actually gets their shirt in time to bring it with them to BSD Can.
Classy looking shirt. I like that.
Yes.
That logo. Boy, that logo looks really good on blue too.
Yes.
So check it out at teespring.com/BSD now.
Yeah, I know with the, and we also had the link for the, if enough people are interested in the old BSD Now shirt, then Teespring will reprint that if enough people are interested. But this one is a lot more subtle, right? Instead of huge chests covered with
which is it's interesting because that's how we went with the new last logo too. Is we decided to go a little smaller because people are like, "Hey man, I love your logo, but I don't really want to be a walking billboard for you." And I'm like, "Okay, fair enough. I understand. How about above your boob?" And it looks good there.
Well, also, I like having the option of colors. I have so many black T-shirts and
Yeah.
so many white T-shirts.
Yeah, yeah.
I love gray, and blue is my favorite color.
Yeah, I bet the logo. Yeah, that does. That's just that is a that the
And
BSD now little.
It's, the hoodie they have in both a light gray and a dark gray. Like if you like the ash or if you like the darker gray.
Oh man, they have their darker gray is nice. I got a couple of unfiltered shirts in that one, and they're my favorite. They are my absolute favorite. I'm gonna have to get one.
I might have to get the blue hoodie because my blue hoodie from Sweden shrunk on me and it's too small.
I'm in a mood for a T-shirt. I think I'm gonna get a gray T-shirt. I think that's what I'm doing. I love that.
I think we'll get a blue T-shirt.
Teespring.com/BSD now if you'd like to get yourself a shirt, and hopefully they will ship in time. So you can go grab it now. That's pretty cool. I'm glad you guys got that. I like that. I like the smaller logo too. We'll play with that more and more. All right. Well, with the news all done, that means it's time for the TechSNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com or popping that contact link to the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website. Maybe start a thread in our subreddit. Thanks for that at techsnap.reddit.com. John writes in with our first email this week. He says he loves the show. Well, what a good man. We love him. And he has a question. How can I do remote access Plex style? All I have to do in Plex is log into my settings, tick a box to allow remote access, and Bob is indeed my uncle. I didn't have to do anything to the router or firewall. Now I can access my Plex server from the web browser from outside of my network, as if I was at home. I've also noticed that OwnCloud has a similar solution. They call it the OwnCloud proxy. It allows connecting to your privately hosted OwnCloud from anywhere without requiring you to make changes to your local network settings, no router configuration, no DNS entries, no domain name registration. He says, how can I set up this kind of service? Where do I start? What to Google? I'm not looking to replace Plex remote access, but I'd like to replace OwnCloud proxy. Will I be able to use this solution for anything other than just OwnCloud? Thanks for the great show. Keep it up.
So I'm not sure how the Plex one works, but in general, you have these kind of proxy app type things, or sometimes they're called a cloud bridge. I think PCBSD is going to have one for their sysadmin tool. And basically, it's a little app you would run on something like a DigitalOcean droplet. And your server at home connects up to the DigitalOcean droplet, getting through the firewall there. And then your device can connect to the DigitalOcean droplet, and it has the authentication or whatever, and then allows you to connect to the thing at your house. Basically, punching through the firewall. It basically works the same way that what they call them? Super Peer? What was the thing called in Skype back when it was for punching through the firewall?
They were
Supernode.
Supernodes. Yep, that's what they were.
So basically, this would be a private supernode.
Yeah, and Plex is essentially when you go into the Plex, your local Plex server. When you log in, it's connecting to the Plex cloud service, which is proxying the connection. It's
not proxying the video you're watching through it, right?
No. When you play the video, well, what it does is it negotiates the session for you. So it handles all of the communicating back and forth between the two systems.
So I guess maybe it's just acting as like a stun server.
Yeah, I guess that'd be a good way to look at it. Yeah.
Well, it's just like
you have the way it works would say you have either the web page or you have an app on your mobile device. You run the Plex app. It connects to the Plex cloud service, which is communicating with your Plex server. Has the entire inventory, the whole library, as they call it. Then you're browsing the library. The library isn't necessarily coming directly from the Plex server, but once you queue off the file, it negotiates that connection. And I don't recall specifically, but I could try right now and see. I could look and see what it says the IP is. So if I log into Plex,
I'm guessing it's doing something to open the port to allow you to connect. I'm just not sure.
Probably using like universal plug and play or something like that.
Well, I think it doesn't require that though. Like with the one like
I don't know.
Cloud proxy or a cloud bridge, the idea is that you'd actually be routing the traffic through your DigitalOcean droplet. So the Plex one, they provide the service, and I don't know how that because I'm sure they're not wasting all their bandwidth.
No, plus they'd have copyright issues out the wazoo if they did.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's see. I'm connected to Plex, and I'm going to play this episode of Batman from Angela's. It doesn't give me any URL information. Right. It just yeah, okay, yeah. So it's playing, but it doesn't tell me
what machine, what kind of OS are you on.
It's a Linux box. You're going to
it's not a terminal run like netstat.
Yeah. See what? Oh yeah, I'll just leave it playing in the background and keep the connection open. That's
yeah, and just see if you can if you notice what the IP is. I don't know. Do you know what your home IP address is or Angela's house IP address is?
No, but I would probably, if I recognized it.
Well, if you don't put the -n in, it'll resolve names, but it'll take a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I do see a name I do see something that looks like her, and it looks like it's an HTTPS connection.
Right.
Huh, interesting.
But normally that would have to be port forwarded to work.
Yeah.
So I don't know how the Plex one works, but most of the proxy-based ones or cloud bridges work by basically your thing at home connects out to the cloud, and then you connect out to the cloud, and it basically just proxies bits back and forth. The disadvantage is it basically has to receive all the data from your house and send it back to your phone or whatever, and vice versa. So it does use some bandwidth, but you get a terabyte of bandwidth included with your droplet for $5. It'll be fine. The problem is most of these proxies are specific to each individual application, like the own cloud proxy.
Yep.
Your generic solution is a VPN, but like you say, VPN usually means having to install a client.
Yes. Yeah. I wonder.
During most NAT punching, you'd have to spoof the from IP address, though, right?
I wonder. That's what I was just going to ask you, because I was reading Daring's comment in the chat room. I'm wondering if
I'm just not sure how you would punch the NAT as a third party and how that would be at all secure if you could.
Yeah, and that's what it sounds like.
Well, I guess you could probably just get both sides to try to connect to each other, and they might open the thing, but the session ID, like the sequence number of the TCP things wouldn't match up.
What about just doing something like SSH tunneling or something like that? Could you just accomplish some of this with just doing something simple?
Well, again, SSH tunnel will require the client on the machine and a machine to tunnel through.
Yeah.
Like a DigitalOcean droplet. But yeah, for a lot of things, a $5 DO droplet is amazing for this type of thing.
Yeah, and if you do know, leave us a comment. How does Plex make that connection? And I know it's a direct stream from Angela's server when I play that episode of Batman, but nothing is revealed in the URL as to how that's actually happening. The player handles all
behind
that.
NATs, how do you get out?
Yeah, and yes, we could mention Tink as well as JB Live 89. What 82
that's
is
just another kind of VPN, right?
Yes. All right.
Isn't Tink more like Tor? So
it's more like a mesh VPN. So each one that has a client, you all of a sudden are like on this virtual subnet, this virtual LAN, I guess, is my understanding. I've never used it, but so Gary writes in, and he's got a question that's pretty cool about remote tracking of log files. He says, my 10-year-old son and I share an interest in going deep in learning Linux and FreeBSD. We are at the beginning of a long journey, but so far we've experimented with lots and have enjoyed setting up all kinds of environments on old and new laptops on DigitalOcean too. We started exploring the system logs on Ubuntu, and the logs are great. It's clear learning more about them will give my son and I a great confidence in how we administer our systems. Boy, just today, that is such a good point. Just today, I was installing and changing my login manager on my system upstairs, and I had this crazy font set up, and it totally caused it to bork, and I realized I think a key thing before you ever go in and make any changes on your system is learn to read the log files first. So that way, when it borks, you can go read that log file and quickly fix it. So boy, you're on the right track here, Gary. He says, I'm looking for advice on generic log framework capable of extracting systems log from a local Linux box to a cloud or mobile phone so we can, 1, remotely track the logs, 2, learn more about the logs so we can understand them and take them in the back of hand, and 3, be able to set triggers and notifications according to log state. Someone at my work suggests I look into Splunk, but the free tier does not appear to be secure enough for my taste. And I would like to manage the receiving server of my logs directly on a droplet. Any suggestions? Thanks for the show, Gary Z.
That was the problem I had when I looked at Splunk as well. Although if you set it up to run on like localhost and then put your own Nginx in front of it to proxy and provide, authentication, then it's less bad. But in the show notes, Chris has added a bunch of stuff about Logstash or ELK, which is Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana, which we've talked a little bit about how to do it on BSD as well. There's a tutorial on BSD now.
Cool.
Not a tutorial, but a link in one of the show notes. And I happen to know a friend of mine, Dan Langell, who runs BSDCan, has been doing a lot of work with this lately.
This is a heck of a series up on DigitalOcean. In fact, I linked to two things, the introduction and the beginning of the series, and then like a huge roundup of stuff that Dio has posted on Kibana and using on a VM or using Logstash and using Search. So this could be a great start.
Yeah, and there's lots of nice dashboards that give you pretty graphs and stuff you can look at on your phone and alerts and all that stuff.
All the things. And it's not a bad skill set to learn anyways. So. There you go, Gary. Let us know how it goes. Kevin writes in about FreeNAS and a DMZ. He says, hey, I've got a FreeNAS box set up with one NIC and two tagged VLANs. VLAN 1 is for internal use, file storage, etc. And VLAN 2 is going to be for a DMZ where I will put jails on the FreeNAS server for OwnCloud and Subsonic, etc. You might want to look into a replacement for Subsonic. Right now, everything seems to work in that everything can talk to everything else and traffic is getting tagged properly. Now I'm ready to lock down the DMZ, preventing routing between the VLANs on the FreeNAS box and keep my DMZ jails from accessing anything but the bare minimum. From what I can tell, this should be done with PF on the FreeNAS host. Is this correct? My PFSense box would decide what internet traffic goes to the FreeNAS on VLAN 2, and the FreeNAS PF keeps that traffic from everything but the appropriate jails. Thanks, guys. Kevin.
Yeah, so normally you'd be able to do everything on the PFSense, except for in this case, your jails, because they're running on the FreeNAS, which has access to both VLANs, the private one and the public one, or DMZ.
Sure.
Means that on the jail, you could normally reach into, or from inside the jail, you could normally reach into the private VLAN that you don't want to allow them. It depends how the networking is set up on the jails as well. If you're using what's called a vImage, where the jails actually have their own complete networking stack and you can have their own firewall and so on, which I think is the default on FreeNAS, then they're bridged to an interface. And you could make it only bridge to the VLAN 2 and not, then it wouldn't be able to access anything in VLAN 1. And then you wouldn't need a firewall because to get from VLAN 2 to VLAN 1, it would have to go through the PFSense, which would deny it. But if you just have the regular type of jails, then yes, you could use firewall rules on the FreeNAS to do it.
Real quick, real-time follow-up.
I don't know how easy it is to set up the firewall on FreeNAS because it's really stripped down. I don't know.
I was wondering about that. Yeah. I was wondering.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there's probably some Googling that could quickly reveal the answer to that. That's probably not the first time somebody's thought of that one. Just a real-time follow-up to Gary's question about log monitoring. Inagogo in the chat room points out that on LAS, we've also featured in the past log.io, which is something a little simpler, Gary, and probably not your speed, but it is a real-time log monitor in your web browser for your different servers. And it's actually kind of a neat setup. It is a dirty Node.js app, but if you can get past that, it's pretty simple to get going and kind of really fancy looking, but probably not what you're looking for. But others out there that want something a little simpler and maybe have a smaller setup, you can check out log.io. Logio.org is where you find that, or check the last page.
Really? They did log.io as the app name and didn't buy the domain and made it logio.org?
Yes, sir. I know. All right.
That's kind of pushing the whole point of .io into the garbage can, but anyway.
Real quick feedback, follow-up, just like a news story, briefly important for people to know. We do have an emergency flash update. Dun, dun, dun. We need a jingle, but I know we can't have jingles. But if there ever was a need for a jingle, a flash update jingle would be it. Dun, dun, dun.
So there was a 0-day being exploited in the wild, so make sure you're on 21.0.0.242 or newer.
For all of the OSs. They get it. All right, there you go.
So yeah, the version number for Linux is weird. It's like 11.2. something, 640 something.
I don't even know about it. I just use Chrome if I'm going to use Flash. That's where I keep Flash contained to is Chrome. Just leave it in there.
Yeah.
If you want to send us a question, feedback, follow-up, anything like that, go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact and choose TechSNAP from the drop-down. That seems to be the popular way. Or email us directly, techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com. We love your questions. It's one of our favorite part of the show, but we need more of them. So if you've got one that's been noodling around in there, go ahead and send it in to us, and we'd be happy to answer to it. Or maybe a project that you've been thinking about and need some clarification. Those are always fun, too, to see right when somebody's thinking about something and help them get them started in the right direction. TechSNAP@jupiterbroadcasting.com. But with the feedback all done, that means it's time for the TechSNAP Roundup! Welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are stories that just didn't fit at the top of the show, but we still want to give you some more links to follow up on your own and read on your own after the show. And some of these links were powered by our incredible subreddit at techsnap.reddit.com. Our first one, I thought for sure Alan was going to bring to the Roundup this week because producer Q5Sys submitted it to a few of our different subreddits. So I thought it might be on your radar, but this one, I just don't even know what to make of this. The FBI will be able to obtain a warrant starting in December if you have Tor installed on your computer and they know it.
Right.
So
they'd have to know it first.
I would guess they would notice Tor traffic or something. But if Congress fails to act, there's been a rule change that as a result, the FBI will be able to legally search computers running Tor remotely, even if they have no idea where the machine is located or what it's being used for. Simply having Tor installed on a computer would be reason enough for the FBI to investigate that user to combat cybercrime.
So this is, if you have Tor installed, the FBI has the right to hack into your computer and look around on it.
Yep.
Without even finding out where it physically is.
Seems like a bad precedent.
Sure. How are they planning to actually do that is another thing too. But
yeah. Well,
probably why they were trying to harass that Tor developer. You remember that last week?
Yes. I had not made that connection. Yeah. Interesting.
Like, yeah, so that, that what's that Tor browser bundle? We kind of need to get some software in there to be able to snoop.
Speaking of getting software in there, you found a good one.
Yeah.
This is what
Allwinner, which is a company that makes mobile devices and lots of stuff. They ship an SDK for people to build their own ARM-based devices. Right? They make the chip for stuff, not Raspberry Pi, but a lot of similar type things. And they provide an SDK for other people to build their own device out of it. And it turns out in their SDK, the custom kernel they ship has a root backdoor that they, I don't know, apparently forgot to turn off or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, they posted it up on GitHub, right? So
yeah, it's the Linux
they're
kernel.
taking it down now.
Source it, and it's a Linux kernel. They had to open source it, and they left their backdoor in and forgot, I guess. And it's used in many devices. Apparently, the Orange Pi, Banana Pi, QB Truck, PC Duino.
Isn't it amazing, Alan, how many of these manufacturers, A, apparently develop these things with backdoors, and B, apparently accidentally leave them enabled in the most obvious and sort of dumbass ways? Like and it's not one, it's not two vendors, it's like a solid dozen now.
Like all of them.
It's just unbelievable. And I mean, I understand. I guess I don't accept the answer that debug is the reason that they need backdoor root access.
Yeah, so this one is especially bad. Basically, if you echo root my device to /proc/sunz_debug/sunz_debug,
no,
the privileges of that process are immediately super root.
No,
Set all the effective UIDs to 0.
No, you're not. No, you echo. What do you echo? What you echo? What?
Root my device. You see the string right there in the picture?
No, I can't accept that. That is too hilarious. That is so great. Oh my gosh, that is.
And when you do, it literally prints out. Now you are root.
That is a good one.
Can't you install sudo? Like
that is great. I mean, it's right there on the screen, and I still can't believe it.
Yeah, and it's like, how do they put through code review? It's like, well, the Linux kernel is kind of big, and this is probably just stuck in a corner somewhere. And
that is true. That part's true, but yeah. All right, so I don't.
If you have the stock OS for a lot of those devices, you probably want to look into updates.
I'm starting to think maybe I should use the blockchain for all kinds of things. At least that's what these schools are thinking. This is something interesting. They're using the blockchain, which for Bitcoin, to store school information. It's Halliburton School of Software Engineering in San Francisco is one of them. They announced plans to...
Yeah, I can see where this would be useful. Basically, with the blockchain, once you write information and you build other blocks on top of it, that information can never be changed because it would actually fork the blockchain and go somewhere else. So especially being a software development school, they probably have lots of students trying to screw with their grades. So by using a blockchain, as soon as any other student has a grade after you, your grade is basically immutable without rewriting the grades of every person after you.
The other thing they said, which is interesting just from the complete other end, is for hiring employers, they say it avoids the time of having to contact different universities and go through third parties, which I guess there's like an industry where employers go to, and then those people go and contact schools and get information. And the future employers could just check the blockchain themselves. Proof of concept, I'm sure here. I mean, this is really super early days, but it's interesting to think of the blockchain and Bitcoin outside of the uses for Bitcoin, and then that's really pretty fascinating stuff. They say the blockchain also means the school saves money from building and operating its own database. There you go. I suppose that's true too.
Yeah,
let's make the blockchain huge.
Really atomic operations. The blockchain is very happy to lose information. Is an important thing to remember.
So Yeah, that's true. Speaking of crypto, Alan.
In general, I would say that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, maybe we can start distributing our episodes that way. People would have to run it through a parser, but I mean...
Well, yeah, more importantly, blockchain, you'd have to watch previous episodes before you can watch next episode.
We should try it. Somebody's going to do it one day. Mark my words. Yeah. Okay, moving on. Speaking of bad crypto...
Yes. So the developers who wrote the Open Smart Grid made up their own crypto, which is never a smart idea. So they came up with like their own hashing algorithm instead of doing like, HMAC SHA-256 or something. That's standard. And so it turns out it's really easy to break.
What?
And in the story, there's a link to just how to brute force it. And not only that, but use it to get back the private key and be able to own everything.
Jeez.
Whoops.
So this one's no good. This is the plague of a Windows box at a hospital. A medical equipment crashed during a heart procedure, and it's actually no joke. Like, there was a small 5-minute window they had during the surgery that this thing had to get back online. It's two main modules in this machine. One is like the actual medical device, which is like serious and it's connected to catheters and all that kind of stuff. The other component is a software package that runs on the doctor's computer or tablet and takes recorded data and logs it to display on screen via like charts and stuff like that to make it easy for him to read.
Yeah, so it takes in data over a serial port and makes graphs.
Yeah. Now, of course, things are going along. They're actually in the middle of a heart surgery, and the machine locks up. After investigation, it reveals that the machine was configured to scan for viruses every hour, and it started the scan right in the middle of the procedure. Then the antivirus froze access to crucial data required by the application, and when it was unable to access real-time data, it crashed in a spectacular way, and it took the thing down. Yeah. And so there you go. That's an old good story.
It's like, well, the documentation for the software from the vendor says you should whitelist it from your virus scanner.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, file locking, that can be a thing. All right, so tell me about this one from Vox, 40 maps that explain the internet. Oh, I think I'm going to like this one.
So as you start scrolling there, you see the first one is the very first internet, which had like 4 computers on it.
Yeah, it's adorable.
And then by the 1970s, it's like, oh, we can go to the East Coast too. Look at that.
Yeah, there's ARPANET expands in 1970. And then in 1973, we go international. Look at that, to London.
Yes, the first time we go to London and Hawaii.
And that other country, Hawaii, out there. ARPANET goes international in 1973. And then 1982, the community grows. Look at that.
Get more stuff online.
And then 84.
Then the ARPANET becomes the internet.
Yeah. That's a big one. Yeah,
maybe it's a little faster. There's 40 of these.
That's when. That's also when TCP went live. So I'll jump ahead a little bit. So 92. Whoa! Look at that! Holy crap! When you go to when you start getting to the 90s, this stuff gets crazy.
Then you get privatization, and then there's some animated graphs as people get on the internet, and then as people get broadband. Then they had that one there that shows the TLDs, where they come from.
Yeah, that's nice. Then there's the map of the underwater fiber optic cables.
There's fiber optic cables. That's really only covering the Atlantic. It misses most of the Pacific.
Yep.
Countries where the internet could easily be taken offline.
Yeah. Syria.
How Syria dropped offline because it shows the cables there.
Censorship around the world.
Yeah. I love that. It's like we didn't even test Canada. This just shows where in California most technology companies are.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it. Look at YouTube all the way up there.
They missed a bunch of companies that should have been on the list as well, but anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
And then we have Google, the browser wars, as you see everybody switching from Internet Explorer.
The birth of Facebook and the growth of Facebook like crazy.
Seeing which social networks win in which countries.
A map of where major Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, and Facebook data centers are is interesting.
Yep.
Data centers in the U.S. in general.
Broadband penetration by state.
ISPs.
Most popular ISP, you can see. And which two are merging? Time Warner and Cox, is it?
I don't remember. I mean, that happens so much now. I can't keep it straight.
Well, because the Comcast one got blocked, and so somebody else bought that other one instead.
Yep.
Then they show Google Fiber and where it's available and where they're planning to go to. Then which places have municipal fiber, which states have made municipal fiber illegal.
Oh, look at Washington right there, a bunch of jerks.
Yep. Then they have comparing the number of people that tweet about twerking versus the number of people that tweet about Syria.
Wow.
And show that most of the country, they tweet more about twerking, but in the South, they tweet 4 or 10 times more about twerking than about Syria. So twerking is always more popular, but in certain states, twerking is many, many, many times more popular than Syria.
Hey-oh. Yeah. Don't even ask about T-Swivel. All right, so here's a cool one. You can see watching the people be awake and asleep via Twitter activity.
Yeah.
Corn consumption by state. Oh, good to see Washington's in the darker green, which means one of the higher consumptions. Yes. Although Utah, damn Utah.
And like Dakotas.
Yeah, man.
To step it up.
Yep. And then, of course, Wikipedia is in here and languages of the world, at least according to Twitter.
So Wikipedia, the different colors signify how much it knows in different languages. So you can see in certain places different colors. Yeah. And then, the languages, the languages one is interesting. I wonder if their data is partly skewed. But we see that, the Netherlands is very much everybody speaks Dutch.
Yeah. Huh. This is pretty neat.
It's just more concentrated.
This must have taken a lot of work.
Well, I think you can tell that a lot of them were done by separate people, and they just kind of aggregated them all together. But
still pretty cool. Link in the show notes. This one is really making the rounds today, so I thought I'd just toss in the roundup. It's sort of a visual one, so I'll paint the picture for you. There is sort of a white generic-looking SUV with a generic Google Maps sticker stuck in the window.
That literally looks like somebody printed that on an inkjet printer and stuck it in the window.
Yeah, this isn't a Google Street View car. It's a government spy truck. They looked into it and by finding registration information on the dash and whatnot, and contacted Google. Google confirmed this was not them. It's an SUV. It's an SUV tucked away in the shadows of the Philadelphia Convention Center's tunnel, which has the ubiquitous Google Maps logo mounted. Also on the top of the vehicle are 2 high-powered license plate reader cameras. And it looks like to the average passerby.
Has, like this big ball thing, right? The Google cars look very particular,
and they have,
and that's nothing like what they look like. That is like such a bad job of. It's like that logo. That's not the Google Maps logo. That's just something somebody did and printed on an inkjet printer. The interesting thing is, in the window.
They tried to get to the bottom of who is doing this, and all they can really confirm is that car is registered to the local city. And that they confirm it's not a Google Maps car, but they cannot confirm what they're doing with it there, with the license plate readers and whatnot. Kind of weird.
Obviously, license plate reader.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, exactly. Tell me about hackonomics. The cost of getting caught. That's adorable. It's at least a good headline.
So it's interestingly, when you price stuff on the Internet Underground, like exploit kits and stolen credit cards, it's not so much how much they're worth; it's how high the risk is of you getting caught.
Sure, that makes sense.
Basically, for less risky things, they're willing to accept less money, and for more risky things, they want more money. So they did a bit of a study. The Rand Corporation, which does consulting reports and so on, did one and kind of just showing what kind of considerations go into it.
That makes sense
for
to
the
me.
last story, if you look in the chat room, somebody linked.
Rikai just linked what the actual Street View car looks like. Which there's no way that the government was going to put that much money into a whole body wrap. That looks
in particular, this seems like it's the city doing it.
This looks like it's a government agency that's just using a local resource. That looks like it's got LiDAR on it. It's got a 360-degree camera on that thing. It's got a serious mount.
In order to take the actual Google Maps photos, they need 360-degree camera.
Pretty cool.
Or actually a bunch of separate cameras that they stitch together to make 360, but same thing.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, so this is an interesting story about how they found the folks over at Sysdig, I guess, found a bug in the Amazon ELB, which is the elastic load balancer. So tell me about this. What do we know?
It's a cool story about how they found a bug.
There you go. That's pretty much what we know. That's why it's in the roundup.
I didn't have time to read the whole thing. That's why I went in the roundup.
There you go. They got graphs and charts, and always a good story about finding a bug in one of those giants. It's funny. This is the one roundup story this week that we both had that I didn't put in because you got it before I did. Guess what? Pornhub is getting in the bug bounty program, everybody. I got a bug bounty, and varying reward amounts, like what? From like $50 all the way up to $25K.
Up to $25K, yeah. In particular, the idea is that, a good way to hack a whole bunch of people's computers is to be able to inject something into Pornhub. And so they don't want to be the people that give you a virus.
Sure, that makes sense. What I found to be sort of more interesting about this is not that they're doing this, but the fact that they're doing it through this HackerOne site, which seems to be like a bug bounty of hacker bounties. So it's like a wider community. So they're launching on that.
Like Yahoo, Twitter, Adobe, GM, Square, Uber, New Relic, Slack, Dropbox, GitHub, etc.
Yeah, as they say. So that's kind of neat. And now they could add Pornhub to that list down there of companies.
The other thing people found interesting is the list of things that are and are not allowed.
Oh, yeah?
Strictly prohibited is obviously denial of service attacks, because that's not proving anything.
Okay.
Physical attacks against Pornhub's offices or data centers.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Social engineering of our service desk employees or contractors. Compromise of a Pornhub user or employee's account. Or automated tools to scan botnets, compromised sites, end-user clients, or other means of large automated exploitation, or use of a tool that generates a significant volume of traffic. So please don't take our website down trying to win a bounty.
That seems fair enough, too. Yeah. Okay.
Additionally, they will not accept cross-site request forgery, cross-domain leakage, information disclosure, cross-site scripting attacks via post requests, missing SPF or DMARC records for mailing, HTTP only or secure cookie flags, missing HSTS or other HTTPS related things, session timeouts, missing the X-frame or X content headers in something, click jacking, rate limiting, or being able to download a video. They're not worried about that stuff. They're worried about, compromise their database. Or
in other words, everybody go out there and build a Pornhub or whatever it was .com video downloader. There probably already is one.
But yeah, they have lots.
Good for them.
And because it's HackerOne, they also have a list here of the people they've paid.
You know what? I think it's really nice that they do that. I say good for all porn sites should do that. Because who wants to get crap looking when they're, you know what I'm saying? Nope, that's just a bad time.
In particular, HackerOne seems like a good way for lots of places to get in on the bug bounty things to improve the security of their site without having to manage the entire infrastructure of running a bug bounty program. It would be a lot of work. In particular, HackerOne takes care of the payments and everything. So you don't get paid by Pornhub. You get paid by HackerOne, which also probably looks a little bit better on your resume or something than saying you got paid by Pornhub.
Charum says YouTube DL already does the job. So this next story really kind of upsets me. I guess David Levin was arrested for disclosing a SQL injection vulnerability that he found. I mean, he found it and then, of course, exploited it in finding it, but then disclosed it to the company and ends up getting arrested. Am I tracking
in particular, this? The point is this is the electronic voting system in Florida.
Which seems like pretty important that people know has an issue.
Yes. Well, the people who run the thing
disagree.
You didn't know.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's pretty disgusting. He's released on a $15,000 bond. Yeah, they say he used a specialist software program to obtain illegal access to the Lee County State Elections website, and while he had access, he obtained several usernames and passwords for employees in the elections office, we're told. He then went to a step further and used the Lee County supervisor username and password to gain access to other password-protected areas. All this was done without him seeking permission. Wow. The arrogance. These people, when it's this kind of attitude is going to lead them to getting election data just completely owned.
Yep. It's better. He reported it so that, I don't know if we could do blanket amnesty just because you report a vulnerability after you exploit it.
Yeah, I follow you on that.
And, there are limits to what you should be doing without having permission and so on. But yeah. Calling it specialized software when he did an SQL injection is, make it sound like he was using some illegal program. It's like there's no such thing as an illegal program.
Alan warned you it was coming. We got a story about SAP. This one is attackers were targeting a critical flaw since 2013.
Yes. So they've been attacking different businesses since 2013, but it's still ongoing. SAP mitigated the flaw, which definitely sounds like they didn't fix it. They just made it harder to exploit. But obviously not everybody's updated apparently. And it's some Java applet thing. And you can basically get access to applications with no authentication at all by hitting a secret URL, basically. So if you can guess the URL, you can just run the application and do whatever you want.
So this one's been getting a lot of attention this week. Twitter has been blocking the feds from mining their service. And I guess...
So yeah, Google bought a company that mined Twitter, Twitter bought the company that was mining Twitter.
Data miner?
Kept it running as a service, and they sell this to people.
Correct. And they have also...
But the government was also having access, and they're like, no, we don't want that anymore.
And you can still go to Twitter and pay for access to the full Twitter feed, which I guess is supposed
and they've just decided to cut the government off. It seems like the government will just pay one of the other people that has access, or
probably
some company that will buy access.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with Operation Orchestra, which is a talk from FOSDEM 2 years ago, I think, that FreeBSD developer Paul Henningkamp gave, where he outlined what the NSA should be doing, or what they could be doing, that would be better than what they're doing now. And that's the kind of things. It's like, if we need to wiretap Skype, well, we just get Microsoft to buy it. Mm-hmm. Or, we need to get a bug in some open source software. We just pay a developer to do it.
The article points out that the CIA spokesperson, Dean Boyd, declined to comment directly on the agency's access to the data miner service, but said that the value of open source information has never been greater. I hate that they're calling anything posted on the web as open source information.
Open source intelligence. In that particular case, that definition of open source is old.
Is it?
As old as open source, yes.
Oh, okay.
It just means as opposed to secrets. It's
they took something in the public.
Yeah, well, open source intelligence can be are you familiar with the Jane's series of books?
No.
They're basically textbooks about airplanes and boats.
Okay.
If you get Jane's Fighters, it's all information about every airplane ever.
So if you
we know that the F-14 can fly this fast because it was in this book. That's open source intelligence.
See, it just feels so cheap calling things that people tweet open source intelligence.
Yes. It just means it's not a secret. And yes, it conflicts with the definition of open source we use in our everyday lives. But for them, it just means the source
that
of
makes me feel better.
That
does make me feel better. Yeah. Okay, so tell me about this email mishap that leaks Google staff data. Uh-oh.
Yes. So Google outsources the management of their health benefits, employee benefits stuff to a company.
Sure.
Well, this company, apparently somebody there accidentally emailed a big file full of sensitive data like social security numbers to the manager at the wrong company. So not Google.
Man. That's got to be totally encrypted. I'm sure they were using GPG encryption for the emails, so I'm sure everything was totally encrypted and fine.
Luckily, the person who received it at the other company was like, "This isn't for us." Whoops, and deleted it and told Google and the company about it.
Oh, okay. So what's this thing about a PDF that's viewable? What's this?
This PDF is Google's announcement that went out to its employees. They have to give that to the state of California.
Right. Okay.
Yes, they didn't post a PDF of everybody's social security numbers online.
Now, here's the new trend, Alan. This is the new security advice going around. Don't change your password. Don't change your password.
Well, not quite, but it's something, we've been telling people for a long time. If you work at a place where they have one of these policies where you have to change your password every 30 days and you can't use any of your last 12 passwords, people tend to just increment the number at the end of the password.
Yeah, they get lazy.
They get terrible. Well, having a much longer secure password that you just stick with is probably better.
Okay.
You still need to change it when it gets breached or whatever, but basically forcing you to change your password every so many days usually results in people using worse passwords.
Yeah. Duck battery staple, is that what it is? Duck battery horse staple? It just uses a long sentence. Horse bat, yeah, okay. Put a duck in there too. Why not? add a duck. Add a duck and a number. Okay, what's this about U.S. Congress banning members using Yahoo Mail? No more personal Yahoo Mail accounts, I guess?
Well, in particular, they're getting ransomware attacks, and somehow they think blocking Gmail, Yahoo Mail, and Google AppSpot is going to help.
Oh, so Gmail's on the list too, huh? Okay.
Yeah. Well, Google AppSpot, which is basically a thing that when you're using Google's compute engine, or actually the AppSpot is the version before we only uploaded your app and you didn't get access to the operating system.
Yeah.
But basically you could upload an app and it would run it and it's free. Some people that worked at the Congress there actually wrote some cool apps for the Congress people to use. And those are now blocked as well. But because there was one ransomware actually used something on Google AppSpot, they've blocked it all. Seems like that's really not going to help.
That's sort of like the full.
If the threat vector is people getting phishing via Yahoo Mail or Gmail, I doubt that them using Outlook is going to provide any more protection. And the Google App Spot is like, well, one bad thing. If you report it to Google, I'm sure Google will take it down. That's what they do.
It seems like the U.S. government and the representatives in it are having a real hard time these days with email. A lot of them are just having a hard time with email. It's just a difficult thing for them.
Lots of people are having trouble with ransomware.
Yeah, that is getting more and more, isn't it? Yeah. I blame Bitcoin. That's what I blame that Craig Wright guy. That's who I blame for I don't know. All right, Alan, I think that just about brings us to the end of this week's show, doesn't it?
That's it.
Okay, well, guess what? Before we go, I just got a little bit of details for you. We'd love to have you join us live over at jblive.tv. We do this show live Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific, which is
4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 GTC.
Boom. Also, you can catch us over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar, and then it'll just convert it to your local time zone, so you don't have to worry about that. Also, jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact for feedback, and techsnap.reddit.com for topics that might just wind up in our roundup, and RSS feeds, so you can get this show every single week, are linked over in the show notes, where links to everything we talked about are also posted. All right, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of TechSNAP, and we'll see you right back here next week.